Hi, and welcome back to the Data Optimization Project ITSAC Resources SOW. My name is Tracy Romero. I'll be your webinar manager, and we'll navigate through this process for the team that will be speaking today. I'm going to go over some quick welcome and Zoom webinar housekeeping. Please be able change for hearing purposes. Change audio by switching between computer audio and phone call. And in the phone call option, just follow those phone number so that you can dial in. Attendees are muted. And so that we can make sure that all of our attendees have audio, if you would please click your raise hand option, I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'll follow through to make sure we get enough of those raise hands options. Great, thank you very much. Looks like we've got some audio. Now, next segment is really important. We want to ensure that all questions you submit through the Q&A in your meeting controls panel so that we can capture those and be able to share that in any addendums. I have disabled the chat feature, so all questions should come through the Q&A feature. Finally, this webinar recording and the presentation will be made available in an addendum, and Monica Presson, your procurement lead, will share that to y'all independently or as a addendum. Now, at this time, I would like to turn it over to Monica to begin the webinar.
Thank you, Tracy. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Monica Presson, and I will be facilitating today's presentation. Again, you're calling into the Data Optimization Project for ITSAC Resources, solicitation number SOW-02-FY21. This webinar is scheduled for approximately an hour. Therefore, we're going to do our best to cover the webinar information and questions submitted. Any questions not answered during this presentation will be covered through an addendum following today's webinar. Rolling questions will be accepted between today through January 27th. Addendums will be disseminated through the ITSAC portal notice release or an email, so please review these means of communications daily. In today's agenda, we will be covering introductions, discussions with project background and vision, staffing requirements, general information, and procurement process. Questions can be submitted through the webinar, as Tracy explained, in the Q&A meeting controls, but we will be addressing them during the Q&A towards the end of the session. There were some preliminary questions that were accepted through January 15th. Those questions and answers will be read at the beginning of this webinar so that we don't duplicate them at the Q&A towards the end. If there were some questions that were received after the January 15th date, but before this webinar, you can either include them in this Q&A or they can just be taken straight through the addendum process. I am the procurement lead working for Sarah Noel, the internal procurement manager within the Chief Procurement Office, also referred to the CPO office at DRR. I will be covering the general information, procurement process, and then the recap and closing. The panel today joining us is John Mckenzie, Information Resource Manager with the Information Technology Services, Tammy Powell, Enterprise Data Architect within the Information Technology Services. Marie Cohan is identified as the Senior Project Manager within the Project Management Office, and Lynn Hottie, the Director of Hub Outreach and Training. As you're submitting your questions, please reference the document name. In this case, of course, it's going to be the statement of work, the page number, and the section number when submitting your questions. Written questions submitted after the webinar must be emailed to me by Wednesday, January 27th, close of business, which is Central Time. Questions verbally answered today are preliminary questions and are not official until they've been answered through an addendum. Um, there may be several addendums rolling out through the Q&A phase in order to provide you answers as quickly as possible. We anticipate to have answers, all questions, excuse me, we anticipate to have all answers to questions that you've submitted by Friday, January the 29th, through addendums to provide you a sufficient time to respond with a successful response. The earlier your questions are submitted, the more time you will have to respond accordingly. So I'll now begin reading the questions and answers that were provided by the 15th deadline. Some of them will be deferred, and the purpose for that is for additional review, but all questions will have answers through addendums. Question: what does iteration mean in this project? How many iterations are included in phase 1? This is an agile procurement project composed of 10 iterations, each representing a data mart in the data warehouse. Phase 1, the roadmap, is complete, and we're ready to move forward with phase 2, which is the implementation. Question: would DR consider allowing some of these iterations to be performed at an offsite location? Staff must be located within the 48 contiguous states, as stated in the ITSAC statement of work in section 9. Question: web developer, user interface developer in the statement of work. The category mentioned for web developer is application and software development, but web developer comes in the web development category. Please advise on what would be the correct not to exceed for this skill set. This question is deferred for additional review. Is the Rath-Kimball methodology a mandatory requirement for the business analyst? Yes. Knowledge of the business requirements needed to create a data warehouse using a bottom-up approach with confirmed dimensions as essential for this role. Question: does this mean the candidate needs to have source data analysis profiling experience? Yes, these skills are essential to assess the data and understand how to best integrate data from a variety of sources in the data warehouse. Question: does this mean the candidate needs to have business objects experience along with Power BI and Tableau, both at the same level, or is BO a secondary skill? The current tools used for data analysis are business objects and Power BI. Both are equally important in data analysis activities at DIR. Question: will it suffice if the candidates have experience executing projects in or working with MS Projector or a similar tool? Or do they need to be able to draft and prepare projects like a project manager? A DR project manager is assigned to this project and will update tasks in the MS project. Candidates need only to have familiarity working with the tool. Question: has this document been developed? Is this document developed jointly between the DRR and the awarded vendor? And this is for referencing the delivery expectation DED document. This document has not been developed. It is a joint effort. Question: what is anticipated daily work schedule for selected vendor resources? 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. DR normally works schedule is 8 hours between 7 a.m. through 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. Question: for management team resources, are we required to submit resumes of everyone mentioned in our organizational chart like CEO, CFO, or do you need the resumes of the staff who will manage this project? Kindly confirm. Resumes of everyone mentioned in the statement of work. For key personnel question, for key personnel resumes, how many resumes should be submitted for each profile? Only one resume should be submitted for each profile, as duplicates are not needed. Is there a specific format for the statement of work response? Responses must be submitted through the DRR website under the DRR ITSAC vendor portal. Question, will selected vendor resources be required to perform off hours or on-call support? No. Question, what is the current contract value? Is budget allocated for this contract? If yes, can you please let us know the same? ITSAC is an hourly based contract. The contract hours are defined in the statement of work. The project is funded for the estimated cost of the ITSAC resources. Question, does ITSAC stand for IT staff augmentation? If so, where does it fit within the scope of this project? It stands for Information Technology Staff Augmentation. DRR is requesting staff augmentation in the minimum requirements of the statement of work beginning in section 4, staffing requirements. Question, is this project intended to support the BAR, which is the Business Analytics and Reporting, optional offering within few of the DCS shared services bids, like public or private cloud or TSS? This question will be deferred for additional review. Question, is this project intended to be implemented within the DCS as a new service or a standalone under DIR? The current data warehouse is within the DCS program, and the new one will also be within the DCS program. Question, will there be a pre-bid conference to allow for additional information Q&A? The pre-bid conference is today, January 21st at 2 p.m. as indicated in section 13 of the statement of work. There will be an opportunity for additional questions to be submitted. Question, phase 1 is stated as completed. Can a copy of the assessments be shared with interested vendors? More detailed information will be forthcoming following award of the contract. Question, what is the cloud infrastructure to be used in the data warehouse? For iterations 1 through 2, the data warehouse will be implemented on an on-premise environment. Future iterations will migrate to the cloud. The infrastructure is yet to be determined. Question, who will be responsible for the quality assurance testing and acceptance criteria sign-off? The DRR, excuse me, the DRR Enterprise Data Architect will approve all deliverables of this project. Question, what is the makeup of the DRR team to support this effort? The DRR team will be composed of a project manager, data architect, and DBA. Question, the developer role is listed under the application software development category. Is the title the web developer for the user interface development? This title does not fall under the application software development, but under web development. There is no user interface developer position. Please clarify. This answer will be deferred for additional review. Question, ITSAC is a time and materials contract. It is unclear how the awarded vendor will be responsible for the DED and the acceptable criteria, as we will only be providing resources to supplement this project. This answer will be deferred for additional review. Question, what gaps exist during the current architecture? What are the pain points? The project goals are to create a data warehouse that integrates disparate data sources to create customer golden record, avoids a snowflake design with incorrectly designed dimensions and fact tables. It includes solid data and eliminates orphan and history tables. Question, have business requirements been gathered for the new data warehouse? And if so, can we see them? Business requirements have been gathered at a high level, and a deeper dive is still necessary to model the data warehouse for both current and future needs. Question, is there a data governance committee? What does the charter look like? What policies and procedures have been in place? What provisions have been made around the data quality of the governance perspective? How often do they meet? DR recently hired its first data officer, whose mission it is to establish an enterprise-wide data governance program. The details of the program are still in development. Question: what metadata has been gathered? Volume? Is there any metadata repository? Has ownership around key data elements been established? Do we have basic terminology lists, for example, acronyms, glossary of terms, etc.? Are data attributes and entities defined? Part of this project is to create a data catalog and data dictionary, as there is currently no metadata repository. Question: for data key elements, has a security procedure been enacted? Is this the lower level, or is it more sophisticated at the column level? While certain data is encrypted, there is no formal security procedure to restrict access. Question: for key data elements, has an archiving procedure been enacted? A historical record of appropriate data elements will be handled through slowly changing dimensions. Question: are there any plans for master data and what to do if they do exist? Master data management is a goal and expectation of this project. Question: what are the RDBMs database types for the sources and targets? Has ETL tool been chosen, and what is it, and what version is it? Has a visualization tool or tools been chosen, and what version, and what are they? What data modeling tool and version is in use? Is there a naming standard document for conversion from logical and physical models? How is change management handled? Are there stringent procedures in place to move code and data from environments to environment? Are there 4 environments: develop, test, AQ, and production? How is data currently integrated from disparate data sources? Data sources include Oracle, SQL Server, CAPS, Salesforce, and others. SSIS will be the ETL tool. Reporting tools include Business Objects and Power BI. Irwin will be used for data modeling. Naming conventions will be established in the course of this project. The number of environments still has yet to be determined. Question: what is the number of current sources, and what are the plans to expand that number? Are there multiple ERPs for sourcing information? How much of the data comes from third-party or internal sources? The principal data sources are in-house, Oracle and SQL Server databases, as well as data from CAPS and Salesforce. Question: is there a steering committee in place or a discrete number of stakeholders? Are there procedures in place for sign-off at each point where required? Yes, the project has assigned stakeholders and an executive sponsor in place already. Question: is there a high-level project plan with distance milestones and deliverables, or is it that we are developing in phase 1 in collaboration with GRR? Is there an artifact requirement? What needs to be delivered besides a new revamped warehouse? DR has a project manager assigned to this project, and phase 1 is already completed, including a project plan. Phase 2 is the implementation of the data warehouse. Question: how are anomalies in the data handled? Who has authority to decision which anomalies are handled? Who has authority to determine remediation procedures and discovered anomalies? This is addressed by the data governance group. The project team escalates issues such as this as it is discovered. Question: Are there any other reporting or analytical tools such as DR uses for analyzing the data? The principal data analytical tool are business objects and Power BI. Questions. Please share the source system information like technology, number of tables, etc. This question has already been answered in the terms of what the platforms are currently used. More details of the information will be forthcoming following the award of the contract. Question. ETL tools that DRR is planning to use, for example, ODI, SSIS. Question. Is the current data warehouse a dimensional model, we presume? The current data warehouse is an attempt at dimensional modeling, but includes various disparate and conflicting approaches. The goal of this project is to design the current data warehouse so that it conforms with the Kimball methodology. Question. Is there any preferences on what BI software and the data warehouse software that they want to use? The principal data analytical tool are business objects and Power BI. The RDBMs used for this project will either be Oracle or SQL Server. Question. Do you need more of a report writer or 3 tools, the Power BI, the business objects, and Tableau? Is one or more of a priority or equally important? We need someone who can both design a UI for end users as well as write complex queries. The principal data analytical tool is business objects and Power BI. Question. Would you like for us to provide an architect, or does the DR have one allocated? If yes, will it be with corresponding rate classifications? DR already has a data architect assigned to this project. Question. Would you like only the resumes of the team of 5, or would you like to select from multiple resumes for each position? Only the resumes of the team requested within the statement of work. Would you like resumes of the vendor management team or just a technical team of 5? Submit resumes as requested within the statement of work. And finally, question. Is the evaluation criteria both weighted at 50% each, or what is the weighted criteria of the 2? This one will be deferred for additional review. And remember, the ones that are deferred will be addressed through the addendums that we'll be rolling out. So I will now open discussions with John for the background and project vision.
Thank you, Monica. Welcome, everybody. My name is John Mckenzie. I am the Information Resource Manager for DIR. I also am the IT Director that manages the Internal Technology Services Division within DIR. I am the primary business sponsor of this. I am the de facto hiring manager, so the contractors will work for me. And part of my team, Tammy, works directly for me as well and will be the lead architect on this project. So next slide, please. As some of you've gathered by the answers that we've provided already, basically DIR has a legacy data warehouse that's 10 plus years old. It was not really designed to be a long-term strategic solution that can grow and handle the ever-changing business needs of DIR. So we find ourselves in a position where we have to basically reevaluate our data warehouse needs, what we use it for, and come up with a modern strategy on how to do that. That part is what was phase 1 that has been done. Over the past year, we had a data architect in, we did a lot of discovery, we did not a lot of analysis, meeting with stakeholders and coming up with a methodology, a design, And that's how we got to the 10 iterations, right? And the overall, using the Kimball model and everything else was over the past year. So now we are ready to go ahead and start building this new data warehouse, right? And this is where iteration 1 starts, and this is where the ITSAC resources come into play. We approached this with the ITSAC model to give us more control and flexibility over time to implement this versus going with a standard deliverable based model that some of you may be familiar with, right? So this will definitely be led by DIR staff with significant input in from the stakeholders and the IT folks that we have in-house. But obviously, like most state agencies, we don't have the headcount or the funding to hire everybody full-time. That's why we need people on a contract basis, and we'll go into those roles in the next slide here a little bit. The current solution is basically SQL Server on traditional VMs within the data center private cloud. We will begin work on those. We may or may not stand up new development and test environments based on the capacities of our current environments for the project itself. But we are planning to move this over to a cloud solution within the DCS public cloud. Okay, so it will all be in DCS, but it will go from a traditional VM farm to more of a PaaS, IaaS solution in a cloud provider that's available to us under the public cloud. The first iteration, each iteration focuses on a data mart within that based on our priorities, and that's how we get to the 10 iterations. The first iteration is the customer record. We consider that the most important record right now and the one that needs the most attention. So we're starting the customer record in iteration 1. Iteration 2 is the vendor record, which is the second most important record, and we'll start working on that. There is some discrepancies in the data that we'll have to clean up, and that's where some of these anomalies come in that was mentioned. We are standing up the governance committee. The technical team will have some discretion and obviously make some recommendations, but some of the final decisions will be made of the governance committee, which is made up of the business executives and business directors. Next slide, please. So we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about these roles because as some of the questions indicated, there's not a direct map for each role. And some of the roles are very broad, right? Business analyst, right? Business analyst is a very broad role. And there's a lot of subsets and stuff like that. So we tried to be as descriptive as we could in the statement of work to let you drill down onto the skill sets we need for this particular project. Okay. So, obviously when the business analyst, the common things there, process, both business and system analytical skills, mapping of the business processes and functional and technical specifications, right? The broad high level discovery has been done. Each iteration will go into a discovery session itself. So we are starting discovery of iteration 1. So this will get down into the detailed discovery of that, right? And once we onboard some of the ITSAC staff, they will be part of that as well. Data modeler, right? This is dimensional data modeling following the Kimball methodology. All right, we have specifically selected that methodology because we feel it fits best for our needs and meets our future growth and flexibility. It's full life cycle development, architecture, implementation of an enterprise data warehouse. Okay, so very powerful role, very powerful responsibilities, and we're looking for top talent here in these roles. We want people we can trust, we can depend on, and we don't have to hold their hand every time. So same thing, ETL developer. Need to understand the transactional and dimensional ETL. We use the SSIS tool from Microsoft. They will have to do the design and development using that tool for the control and data flow, data source, packaging configurations, etc. UI developer. So one of the things we're going to do right now, we have some canned reports, but it's very ad hoc in a lot of situations. We're going to redesign the reporting into this thing. We want to use the same tools because obviously we already have an investment in licensing and infrastructure to support those tools. But we want better interfaces, better, data, metadata they can pull from. We want better canned reports, et cetera. So we need a good UI developer that can design and develop using the interfaces for Power BI and business objects, while also creating a custom SQL for data set creation and troubleshooting. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that for now. And then I think the next slide and turn it back over to you, Monica.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Just a little bit of background. All the ITSAC cooperative prime contract holders were contacted, and DR requested a respond with their interest of this project. Respondents that responded that were received on or before the deadline were taken into the second phase of the project, which is this webinar. We're looking forward to a successful responses from the prime cooperative vendors. Prime vendors may opt to utilize an acceptable subcontractor in accordance with your hub subcontracting plan, which Lynn Hottie is going to talk over later on in this presentation. DR will do their best of their ability to expedite this procurement process, as the anticipated award target frame is March 1st, 2021. This will be an interactive procurement process, which may include individual interviews, and or group presentations from the teams you have proposed. DR's intent is to select the best value for the state of Texas. This means that during the process, DR may select to utilize an agile delivery method with possible single or a combination of different personnel to make up the selected team through a multiple award. Next slide, please. Please remember that this is an invitation to fulfill staff augmentation through your ITSAC contract, and this is not a DBITS, a deliverable-based contract. So please keep that in mind. Next slide, please. I am solely the point of contact moving forward through the solicitation process. All communications must be emailed to me directly, and I will reach out to DR staff as needed. This information is covered in section 12 of your statement of work. Vendors and all vendor representatives should not attempt to discuss the context of the statement of work with any employees or DR representatives. Vendors and all vendor representatives shall not attempt to discuss the contents of the statement of work with employees or representatives of DRR. Failure to do so may restrict results and disqualifications of any related responses. Any additional questions or rolling questions will be accepted in writing to me by Wednesday, January 27th, by close of business, Central Time. Questions and answers that are verbally answered do not become part of this solicitation. You need to make sure that you supply them in writing so they can be answered through an addendum, which will become part of this process. Oh, next slide, please. Please mark your calendars or whatever means of reminders that you utilize. The deadline for submitting the response is February the 4th. DR anticipates awards by March 1st. Therefore, during this process, please check your emails and voicemails daily. Please note that this is a short time frame. Therefore, we may not be granting extensions. So I just want to be very clear on that. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lynn Hottie, which is the Director of Hub, to go over your Hub subcontracting plan section.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. This is just a reminder for everyone. You currently have a hub subcontracting plan on file with your current contract. So when you're responding to this request, ensure that you're not proposing anyone who is not already included or inclusive of those subcontractors that you have listed on your hub subcontracting plan. So if you need to make any changes, if you need to add anyone to your hub subcontracting plan, you can do that at any time. All you need to do is reach out to our hub office, and we've included the DIR hub email address. So you'll need to update your HSP and you can email it to us. If you are doing that in response to this solicitation, please note that so we can expedite that review. But you're not allowed to utilize anyone for any kind of work that hasn't already been approved through your hub subcontracting plan. So keep that in mind. Keep your HSP current, and always email us with any kind of questions you may have. Next slide. I'll turn it back over to Monica. Thank you.
Okay, so we've reached the Q&A section of this webinar. The phone will be muted and we will be taking a 10-minute break to review the questions that have been submitted. Then we'll be opening back up for discussions and answers. Questions will be addressed after the break. Please note that some questions may be deferred as some may need additional review, but we will address them all through an addendum. This panel will do their best to answer these questions. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Hello, welcome back. This is Tracy. I will be reading the questions and the team will be responding. All right, question 1. SOW section 8.1.1, page 11. Section 8 of the SOW asks for bidders to supply an organization chart. As the project team will be managed by the state, can the state clarify the purpose of the organization chart and what it expects the chart to show?
Yes, so the organizational chart, basically what we're looking for is what the structure is within the vendor's organization. We want to see support.
Next question, SOW section 8.1.2, page 11. Section 8 of the SOW asks for management team resumes. Although there is no other mention of the management team, and Section 2 states that the project will be managed by a DIR project manager. Can the state elaborate on who should comprise any vendor supplied management team and what their responsibilities should be? Please stand by. We're having some audio issues. We'll be right back with you. Okay, for the previous question regarding the organizational chart and the one related to the management team resumes, we will defer and get back to you on that. That will be posted to a follow-up addendum. And I'll go on to next segment or next questions.
So
SOW. Okay, go ahead, John.
I was going to say we're looking for the technical resources, right? So that's the people that we want. Project management will be done by DIR. So there aren't going to be no hiring management or project management as part of this. I guess the extent of that would be how you manage your contractors, right? If we have questions about your contractors or problems or something like that, we're going to go to the management of the company.
Okay, I will go to the next question. SOW section 2, page 3. The state writes in its SOW that DIR will manage this project and vendors will supply the requested personnel. No SLAs or other specific quantifiable deliverables are defined. However, the state also requests resumes from the vendor's management team. Can the state clarify whether it expects vendors to perform project management responsibilities under this contract, or will vendors' role be limited to supplying the requested personnel? In other words, what exactly are the vendor's expectation or expected role and responsibilities?
And Tracy, that was the one I was answering. I jumped your question, sorry.
Got it, okay. Again, audience, we will post final questions. Section SOW section 8.1.6, page 12, section 8.1.6 states vendor shall provide assumptions and dependencies, if any. Can the state clarify what assumptions, dependencies it may wish to see?
From my perspective, there are none. I mean, unless you have your candidate has limited availability, has special work assignments, has special ADA requirements for equipment and software. Those are the things I'm looking for as the IT stakeholder in this. Other than that, then I think we're good.
Next question. Page 4 of 15 from Statement of Work, Data Optimization Project, DOP, Data Modeler, Data Warehouse, ELT Developer, Iteration 3, 55 days, 145 days, Iteration 4, 45 days, 119 hours, Iteration 5, 42 days, 111 hours, Iteration 6, 35 days, 92 hours, Iteration 7, 35 days, 92 hours, Iteration 8, 35 days, 92 hours, Iteration 9, 35 days, 92 hours, Iteration 10, 35 days, 92 hours. Question, do you expect the resource to work part-time for these iterations?
I can answer that, Tracy. The answer is yes. We're only contracting for the hours we need for that role in each of the iterations. So it will be up to the company to have other work or other assignments for that iteration or for that individual when we're not using them. We will work with you on a schedule and stuff like that. But yes, they will not be full-time on the project. We'll be paying for the hours we're requesting.
Thank you, John. Next question. Are you sending out the deck to attendees? The deck and the webinar will be posted in a follow-up addendum. Please monitor the SPD. Please monitor your procurement process and reach out to Monica Presson. Question 2, is there any automated balance and audit control mechanism implemented for ETL?
Tammy, why don't you take this one?
Sure. Tracy, will you just repeat the question real quick?
Question 2, is there any automated balance and audit control mechanism implemented for ETL?
Right. So right now we don't have something like that in place, and that's something that we would be looking into. Right now, we're going to be doing those kind of checks manually and by collaboration with the business and the technical teams, but we don't have an automated tool that's going to do that for us at the moment. So that'll be to be determined.
Next question, page 14, section 11. What is the submission process? The ITSAC portal has a deadline of January 28, 2021. However, the document mentions the deadline to be February 4th. Also, it is mentioned on the document an email has to be sent to Monica with the submission. Please advise. I will defer this question. It will be posted in follow-up documents. Please also reach out to Monica for any for the same question in an email. Thank you. Next question. Hi, what other information DIR required a log with the resume? Thank you.
From my perspective, just the technical resumes and any assumptions or requirements of your candidate, like we've discussed before.
Next question. Will we get the recording of this presentation? That was previously stated. It will be provided in follow-up addendums. Next question, Monica, DIR portal indicates deadline 1/28. I do not think we can submit in portal after the date of the 28th, although you just said it is due on the 4th. Again, the follow-up will be submitted. Please monitor your emails. What is the proper method for candidate submittal within the portal? Will the standard format of qualifications, form, references, resume, and acknowledgement form be required? We will defer that in follow-up. And just to remind everyone, we're having some technical audio issues with the panelist in many of these questions will be deferred for follow-up. Please monitor your emails. Next question, will you post or email a copy of this presentation? That was previously answered. Will you share how many vendors expressed interest in responding to this SOW? That will be deferred. The number of hours allocated for the resource for each iteration do not cover 40 hours a week. Are you expecting the resources to working partial time? I believe that
I think we've already addressed that one.
John. Next question, please clarify for the acceptance criteria in section 5, including deliverables and defect correction warranties would apply to staff augmentation work, and can you provide a copy of the deliverable expectation document, DED?
So since this is ITSAC and you're not going to have actually a deliverable, it's going to be basically what your staff produce on the project, right? So it's going to be under the direction of the data architect and the project manager. So if there's anything, if there's certain requirements for any kind of deliverable, as we're assigning those tasks and as we're working through the iterations, those will be clarified with the individual. And Tammy Powell, as the architect, will be the one that's reviewing and accepting the quality of work by your candidates when they're assigned.
Next question. There are less hours for development compared to data modeler and report development. I understand that dimensional modeling is the approach. SCD1, SCD2, SCD3 must be handled in ETLs. Developer must also work with data modeler and report developer, but not seeing the same hours. Please suggest.
Well, I think the hours come basically on the level effort we see from each role in each iteration, right? So I think to your point, there is not as much work for some of these as there are others. But what we're looking for here is a continuity of the resources, right? So even if your person's not active, maybe they've done their piece and maybe they'll come back in 2 weeks and finish up, right? That's the same individual. So we'll have some continuity there. But yeah, they're not going to be sitting side by side for 40 hours a week for the next 3 years, right? That's not how the project's broken up.
Okay. Next question. Hello, you mentioned best value for some roles. How can we be a part of that? I will defer that for Monica to respond. Next question. There are initial remote positions until, let me restate that. These are initial remote positions until COVID-19 question?
So the short answer is yes. DIR staff, including myself, we're pretty much 100% teleworking right now. So wherever the selected candidate is, I think I've addressed this in a previous question, but if they're local in the Austin area, then they'll telework until post-COVID-19. And then based on what the post-COVID-19 restrictions are, they might be in the office some and they might be teleworking some. If we happen to pick a candidate, say in Oklahoma, and we thought that person was the best candidate and they're teleworking under COVID-19, then we'll probably extend that teleworking and let them continue to work from Oklahoma even after COVID-19, right? We're not going to make a candidate come in that if we've selected them, knowing them that they're in another state or even not close to the Austin area.
Next question, is 5 years experience in Kimball methodology mandatory for the BA?
Yes, if that's what we stated in the SOW, then that's the requirement.
Next question, if we submit a candidate for the project, who then accepts an alternate position before the project starts? Can we provide a replacement candidate with the same skill set?
I think I'm going to leave that up to CPO to address for the contract.
And we will defer that. Next question, please verify that these positions are 100% remote. We heard you state that anywhere in the continental 48 states was okay, so there is no requirement to visit Austin. That was previously responded. Next question, do you have a technical owner and the business owner for data elements? If so, is there any process in place to approve the data models developed?
The short answer is yes. That'll be coordinated through the data architect, which is Tammy, between the technical side and the business side, and leveraging governance as needed. So.
Next question, I don't see security staffing requirements on this effort. Will that be added down the road?
We don't anticipate needing external security staff. We feel we have those skill sets within DIR, and we'll be leveraging them for the project.
Next question, since phase 1 is complete, is the output of that effort available to us?
It's not going to be made available to everybody that's on this call, but obviously if we've selected you or your candidates for this, they'll have access to all of that information once they're onboarded to the project.
Next question, does this work need to be done onshore?
I think we've answered that, if in the continental United States. So that's my definition of onshore, yes.
Next question, Monica, DIR portal indicates deadline is 1/28. I do not think we can submit in portal after the date of the 28th, although you just said it is due on the 4th. Please advise if it is the 28th or 4th.
My apologies. I was having technical difficulties. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
Okay. So the portal does state a deadline of January the 28th, and that's because it only has a 15-day window that allows us to extend it to. The official closing date is the 4th. There's been a ticket that has been submitted to change that date to reflect the statement of work.
Next question, when is the project start date?
So as we stated, we anticipate awarding sometime, prior to March 1st, right? March 1st, I believe, is the last available date there. So as soon as we vet the candidates and make our decisions, we'll be getting people in as fast as reasonably possible.
Next question and last question. Please clarify that the expectation is that the same resource for each role dedicated to this project for up to 3 years, but that the hours allotted to each is not full-time.
So again, the idea is to have a candidate that has sufficient resources to where they can come in off our project as needed, and maintain that continuity over the 3 years. Obviously, that's a desire, right? We know the realities of life. Somebody might be with us for a couple iterations and then move on. Life changes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be all acceptable, but the intention is to kind of have a company and partners that can float the same candidate on and off as needed throughout the duration of the project.
Great, thank you. Those conclude our questions that came in. Again, to remind you, questions verbally that were answered today are unofficial until posted in the form of an addendum. Please, any other follow-up questions after this, submit to Monica based on the last bullet there. Wednesday, January 27th by 5 p.m. is the close of business. Is the last day questions are going to be accepted. And those questions that were not, I see a follow-up question. Okay, those questions that were not answered and deferred will also be included in an addendum. And Monica, would you please add this last question that came in? Will the addendum be posted in portal or emailed?
That one will probably be emailed out. If the system allows us to upload it into that ITSAC portal, we will do that as well, but we're going to capture both just to make sure everyone's receiving those addendums.
Thank you. And I will proceed and turn this back over to Monica to close out.
Okay. So in recapping and closing, all questions, inquiries should be directed only to me. Answers to questions you heard today verbally are not final until they are actually distributed through an addendum. Remember that the responses are due Thursday, February 4th at 2 p.m. Central Time. Any additional questions after this webinar will be accepted. Those questions will be due by Wednesday, January 27th, close of business Central Time. Only questions provided in writing will become part of the solicitation. Any preliminary answers to our question today might change in an addendum. We realize that you may not have received answers to all of your questions, but answers will be followed through an addendum. Do not forget that your HubSpot contracting plan, if there are any changes to your current plan, please make sure that you contact me on that. You can provide a part of your proposal, but then again, it has to be reviewed and approved by our Hub section before you can move forward with those. Within a couple of days of the closing date, DR will review and begin evaluating your responses. And with that, I would like to thank all attendees for taking time out of the day for today's presentation. And this concludes today's webinar. Thank you very much.